When the Crocs co-founder first saw a prototype of the shoes back in 2002, the only words out of his mouth were, "Those are ugly." Somehow though, those ugly shoes created a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company and have been worn by celebrities and even on the runways of Paris Fashion Week. So how were three founders with zero experience in footwear able to build such a wildly successful shoe company? This is the surprising untold truth of Crocs. In 2002, Lyndon Hanson had hit a low point. He was sleeping on a friend's couch after separating from his wife. Around that same time, he also lost his job in computer hardware marketing and his mother passed away from cancer. His troubles seemed endless. George Bodecker and Scott Siemens were longtime friends of Lyndon and could see he desperately needed some cheering up. So they set up a sailing trip together around the Caribbean to try and clear Lyndon's head. Now, Scott was a quietly successful inventor and had made a good living developing and patenting products, and at the time of this trip was already semi-retired at 48. However, whilst they were on this sailing trip together, Scott asked Lyndon and George to try on a pair of rubber-like clogs he'd been developing after discovering something similar on a business trip to Canada. An early version of the shoe was created by a manufacturing company called Foam Creations Incorporated out of Quebec, and the shoes weren't rubber or plastic. In fact, they were actually a special resin that was odor and water resistant, slip resistant on a boat deck, and molded nicely to a foot. The only issue Scott saw in the design was that there was no backstrap, so he'd added one himself and had high hopes that after finding investors, he could distribute this new version of the clogs in the US. He excitedly introduced his two friends to this new creation of his. However, despite Scott's confidence that these shoes would sell, his friends George and Lyndon were skeptical. The shoes were just so ugly. However, after some time spent actually wearing the shoes, which proved to be remarkably light and remarkably comfortable, they completely came around to them. So much so, they decided to go into business together. They named the company Crocs, since crocodiles, like these shoes, can thrive in both land and water. Now, George was also an accomplished man in his own right. He'd had a rough childhood, but started his own lawn mowing business at 10 years old, went on to be a star student athlete with a college scholarship, and then went on to own more than 100 Domino's pizza franchises and served as an executive at the sandwich chain Quiznos.